A very warm welcome to all and good morning to all the participants. We are going to take up the three states of experience, that is waking, dream and deep sleep states. And the question that is asked is Avasthatrayam Kim? What is this Avasthatraya, or the threefold experience which human beings undergo? Then the reply that is given is Jagrat, Swapna, Sushuptyavasthaha. They are the waking, the dream and the deep sleep states. Then each one is again dealt with here. Jagrat Avastha Ka. What is this Jagrat Avastha? This waking consciousness. Then the answer given is Shrotradi Jnanendriyaihi Shabdadi Vishayaischa Jnayate iti yat sa Jagrat Avastha Sthula Sharirabhimani Atma Vishva Ityuchyate. What it means is the state of experience in which the sense objects, that is sound, touch, sight, hearing, taste, the five senses, the sense objects, are perceived through the sense organs, the five sense organs. Sound is perceived by the ear, sight is perceived by the eyes, and so on and so forth. This state in which the five sense organs and the five objects of sense, that means that those aspects which impact the senses, like Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa and Gandha, such a state in which one is active and one is in a state where his senses are functioning. The senses are actively functioning and the objects of the senses which are outside are being perceived by these senses. Such a state is called as the waking state or Jagrat Avastha. Here, what does the self do? Self with a capital S, Atma. As I mentioned in some other context, the Atma, right from the gross physical body onwards, everything up to the highest principle is referred to as Atma in different contexts. Here, the indwelling Atma identifies itself with the gross body. This is a very important factor which we have to understand. When we are awake, the highest level of consciousness in us flowing at that point of time is the presence of our physical body. We feel the presence of the physical body the moment we are in the waking state. And if somebody asks you who are you or what is your name or something like that, you point to your physical body at the heart level or at the chest level and say, I am so and so. Especially with children and all, you see, they refer to themselves as, yeah, I am so and so. It's me. This is something which everybody has that. Every person in a waking state of consciousness, the first and the primary level of identification is with the gross body. This gross body, this identification process with the gross body is given a name and it's called as Vishwa. Vishwa, as I mentioned in the last session, is actually a technical term. And in the Brihada, in the Mandukya Upanishad, this is referred to as Vaishwanara. The term used is Vaishwanara. Sthulabhuk Vaishwanaraha. Jagarita sthano Bahishprajna. Bahishprajna, the outward consciousness, the outer, that means it is conscious about its own physical body and the surroundings. And it is given this technical name called as Vaishwanara. If you remember, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 15th chapter, there is a reference to this Vaishwanara. Vaishwanara actually means one who sustains and holds the entire Vishwa. The whole universe in a personified form is called as Vaishwanara. One who has the Vishwadharana, one who holds or sustains the whole of the creation, Vishwa. The physical manifestation of the universe which we see is personified as a Nara, as a person. And such a person is called as Vaishwanara. Here the simpler term called Vishwa is used. It is actually the corresponding thing which you find in the Bhagavad Gita and the Mandukya Upanishad is the Vaishwanara. And therefore, in the 15th chapter, the 14th verse, Sri Krishna says, Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Pranapana Samayuktaha Pachamyannam Chaturvidham. I am the one who consumes in several billion forms, or even trillions of forms if you take all the living creatures. When you refer to even just to the human species, there are more close to 7.5 billion people are there. In everyone, there is this divine presence which is the actual consumer, who is the one who actually consumes everything. You see the beauty of this idea. If you bear this idea in your mind when you are eating anything, when you are consuming anything, even air and water, if you bear this idea in mind that it is not you as a body or you as a small identity which you call yourself as the I, or what is represented by the self with a small f, or what sometimes is called as the ego, it is not that which is consuming this. There is a much, much higher principle which is operating through this body, and for its own sustenance, it is consuming. The body has to live. For the body to, there's some disturbance in the background. Could you please mute yourself? Please, especially somebody who is joining newly.
Srinivas Murthy, I think.
Yeah, whoever it is, can you please mute them? Or can I mute everybody?
You mute them. You mute.
Select here speaker.
Okay. Now he has muted, sir.
No, even then there is some sound background noise is there.
Coming from the school.
Okay. Okay, fine. Thank you. Kindly, I request you to kindly mute yourself. And unless there is something which you want to say, you please put it in the chat, and then we can come into the discuss that point, or at that point you can ask a question. So the fundamental principle, the moment you understand this principle and remember it whenever we are consuming anything, if you remember and if you recall and retain in your consciousness that there is a greater and a much higher principle operating through me, and it is that which is consuming for its own sustenance and not for the mere sustenance of this physical body, That's why the English saying that we need to eat to live and not live to eat. So we need to eat in order to live. Now, once we recognize this principle that there is a higher being which is consuming everything, obviously we will be careful about what we are consuming, and we will be very careful in selecting the purest form of food or anything which we intake is in the purest form and best suited for the body, not for the taste glands in the mouth. Generally, some research has shown that the taste remains for hardly about 6 or 7 seconds on the tongue on which we have these taste buds. But because we want this repetition of this 7 seconds 100 times or 1,000 times, we eat much more than what is required. We eat beyond our levels of consumption, and that is a cause for disease. That is what causes sickness in the body. So Jiddu Krishnamurti used to say very frequently that if you are sensitive enough, how can you overeat? The fact of the matter is we are not sensitive, and therefore we overeat. So if there is a higher principle which is operating through us and consuming what is being consumed for the sustenance of the body, then we will give it the purest form of air, water, food, thoughts. See, when we talk about ahara, Adi Shankara very clearly mentions in one of his commentaries on the Upanishads that whatever is taken in through all the 5 senses is ahara, not merely food or water. Anything that is consumed through all the 5 sense organs is ahara. And who is it that is consuming? It is that supreme principle personified by Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Therefore he says, Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Asritaha. I have taken refuge in all living beings as a Vaishwanara. And what do I do? Pranapana Samayuktaha. Prana is the in-breath. Apana is in one way the out-breath. Apana is what is situated at the excretory system. The Vayu, that is the air that is situated, located around the excretory system and through which the air is released. Both are important. The in-breath and out-breath, only when both are functioning, we are all right and we are able to go about, walk and do our things. I am consuming the 4 different kinds of food, he says. Pacham yannam chaturvidham. There are 4 types of foods which we consume, which are called as bhakshya, bhojya, shoshya, and lehya. Bhakshya is what is chewed and masticated. That is called as bhakshya. What is called as bhojya is what is swallowed. Some foods are there which we simply swallow. We need not masticate or chew them. Such a food is called as bhojya. Bhakshya, bhojya, choshya. Choshya is a kind of food which we suck and take it in. For example, some fruits like mango. If you're eating a mango fruit, you suck in the juice. So any food which is sucked into the system through the mouth is called as choshya. In Hindi, use the term chusna, that is sucking. And the last one is lehya, that is something which is licked. There's something which you put it on your tongue and lick it, or you use the tongue to lick a kind of food. Such a food is called as lehya. All your chutneys, gitneys are basically lehyas. Lehya is like your all the homemade chutneys and all, which are very tasty actually. So that is called as lehya. These are the 4 types of foods which are consumed. And who is the consumer? The self. And what is the name, technical name given to it? Vaishwanara or Vishwa. Because in the waking state, we are conscious of the physical world. And there is also a fire. Adi Shankara gives in his commentary that there is a fire in the stomach, which is called as Vaishwanara. So this is also the Udarasthaha Agnihi, he says. Vaishwanaraha Udarasthaha Agnihi. Udara means the stomach. What is situated in the stomach? Because as I think in, I don't know when I mentioned it, I made a mention that the gastric juices are actually like fire. They are much more stronger than fire because you get almost the highest level of concentration of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Luckily, because there is a stomach lining, the stomach doesn't get digested itself. Several people eat animal foods and it gets digested. The question was asked by scientists, if I am able to digest animal meat, why is it that my stomach is not getting digested in this these gastric juices? Then the answer they have found is that it has a lining, stomach lining, mucus lining, a very thick mucus lining which can withstand highest levels of concentration of hydrochloric acid. Even that we damage it, that is where ulcers are formed. You know, there is a verse in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika of Swatma Ramaswamy. Swatma Ramaswamy is the author of a text called as Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Hatha Yoga is basically the physical part of the exercise pertaining to yoga. There he says, Udaram Sarvaroga Nilayam. The stomach is the abode for all diseases. Sarvaroga Nilayam. The Udara is the stomach, is the abode or residing place or that great chamber, which is in which there is this repository of all diseases. If we are able to have a properly guided and controlled digestive system, then 90-95% of the diseases do not attack us. We will not be suffering from majority of the diseases. Therefore, that is the importance given in Hatha Yoga, and therefore he very clearly says, Udaram Sarvaroga Nilayam. And this gastric fire has to be properly controlled and proper food should be given to it. And in this waking state of consciousness, the senses function and the senses are conscious. Through the senses, we are conscious about our own presence and also the presence of the entire world around us. There are some references to Vaishwanara in the Upanishads and other things also. I will not go much into it. See, this is there are two things which Adi Shankara refers to. One is the Vaishwanara and the other is the Soma is its food. Soma is actually a kind of a plant whose extract is said to have several medicinal benefits, and that extract is what is consumed. And that's why they say the Devatas are the ones who consume this Somarasa, and therefore they do not age beyond 30. Soma, unfortunately, some of them related to liquor and other things, it's not true. Soma rasa is the rasa or the essence or extract of a plant which we can find. And one who consumes that is said to be maintaining balance and equilibrium as far as his body is concerned and bodily functions are concerned. And it is a herbal product. Incidentally, the moon is also referred to as Soma because they have found, Ayurveda, they have found that the moon is the lord for all the herbs. For all medicinal herbs, the moon and the different constellations are, are considered to be the devatas pertaining to that. If you have any some deeper knowledge of Ayurveda, very clearly it is prescribed that if you want to pick up some herbs, pluck some herbs for medicinal purposes, they have prescribed the time. That means at what time of the night, when this moon is there, the herb should be picked. And also the star constellation associated with the moon, what we call as the nakshatra. Nakshatra is not one star, but a constellation of stars, a group of stars. So the group which is closest to this moon on a particular day is, that particular day is referred with respect to that nakshatra. For example, today is Ardra nakshatra. Ardra nakshatra is found to be the closest to the moon, and there are 27 constellations of these stars, and the moon goes through this phase of 28 days cycle. So the Ayurvedic text very clearly prescribe these things. And in the modern times, Rudolf Steiner, who was the originator of an organization called Anthroposophical Society, he was a very senior member of the Theosophical Society also in the late 19th century and early 20th century. He has, even today, there are several communities in Europe which follow the agriculture system of Rudolf Steiner. He has very clearly given some guidelines as to how and when you should plant a particular, when you should actually sow the seeds, when you should harvest, how you should grow. It very clearly it has been shown. He has demonstrated by saying that I have planted this particular row on the most auspicious and best time possible. And adjacent to that, on a random basis, they have planted it. They have found that the fruit or the vegetables grown through this process are the best and most nutritious and don't require any fertilizer, whether organic or inorganic. And if there is any pest adjacent to it also, it doesn't affect it. This itself is a very big study. There's a very big center in London. Rudolf Steiner Center is there. So a lot of information is available if you read on the Google also about this Rudolf Steiner's method of cultivation. Why I am mentioning all these things is, this is the great science that is available to us, which we are not using, which we simply refuse to use because we want excess of everything. Nothing is sufficient. The maximum amount of wheat is consumed by whom in the US? It is the pigs and buffaloes which consume the maximum amount of wheat. Much more than the human beings. Sir, some disturbance again. Some disturbance, please. Ravi, could you please? I don't know. When people join, kindly switch off your microphones. Okay? Kindly. Again, I'm requesting. So, you see, yeah?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. So, you see, this great science is available. And it has been, it's a matter of recorded fact that maximum amount of wheat and corn and barley and oats are consumed by animals, and we feed them huge quantities of this so that we can eat the protein of that animal by consuming that animal. You see the problem now. So we have distorted the whole system and destroyed it, and we have totally, wrong priorities in our life. I am again dwelling on this just to show the fact that what is the kind of importance we give to this small thing called as food. It's a very small, should be a very small part of our activity. We are giving unnecessarily, unfortunately, so much of importance. That is why it is said that the sages and the saints live only in the forests, and they consume the fruits and roots and leaves and vegetables that are wildly grown, and they sustain themselves on that. There is a niyama or a prescription for sannyasis that they should not light fire. Sannyasis are not supposed to light a fire, because once you start a fire, then whenever it is cold, you would light a fire. Whenever you want to cook something and eat, you will light a fire. So this is all basically nothing very sacred about it. The only idea is you limit your restrictions, your activities. You restrict your functioning, and so that you can focus and put your attention on something much more important, which is the spiritual progress which we are talking about. But this is the background for the whole gross body. And therefore it is rightly referred to as Vaishwanara. And Adi Shankara finally makes a very beautiful statement. He says, Anna dosha lepaha na bhavati. He who recognizes this fire of Vaishwanara in the gastric system, in the stomach, and lives by this idea that there is a higher being consuming this food, for such a person there won't be any anna dosha. The defects of food, any defect in the food does not affect such a person. In fact, every food has got a positive and a negative aspect. That is why whenever somebody has a particular disease, they prescribe that please don't eat these foods. Please eat more of leafy vegetables. Please don't eat root vegetables. And certain kinds of foods, they say for a particular disease, this is not good, because it increases that disease. But for a person who consumes it rightly and with a sacred sense of a higher being sitting and operating through his physical body, he will consume the right quantity and right quality of food, and such a food will not have the defect that normally all foods carry. That's what he says, Anna dosha lepaha na bhavati. It doesn't stick to you. The dosha, the fault, the defect in the food does not attach to you, does not stick to your system and damage it. This is the beauty. We are actually talking about a state of consciousness which is called as waking. But I have come into this subject because the waking state of consciousness is recognized only when all the five senses are actively functioning, and the five senses are able to recognize the five objects of the senses, and the self identifies itself with the gross body, and it is given this technical name of Vishwa. I think we have spent enough time on this waking state of consciousness. Okay, then we'll go to the next one. Swapnavastha ka iti chet Jagradavasthayam yad drushtam yad shrutam tad janita vasanaya nidra samaye yah prapanchaha pratiyate saraswati.
ನಿಷ್ಕಲ್ಮಶ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಷಯ ಸಿಟ್ಟು ಮತ್ತೆ ಓಲೈಕೆಗಷ್ಟೇ ಸೀಮಿತವಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. Mr. Srinivas, Mr. Srinivas, can you please mute? Thank you.
Okay. Please, I am again requesting, because this is being recorded, and if a lot of disturbance comes, then there is a problem with the thought flow also. And here, Sukshma Sharirabhimani Atma Taijasa Ityuchyate. The translation is, for the question, what is Swapnavastha or the dream state? The explanation is, the world that is projected while in sleep from the impressions born of what has been seen or heard in the waking state is called dream. See, very beautifully, very concisely defined. The self-identifying itself with the subtle body is called as Taijasa here. A second technical term is used here called Taijasa. Now you see the point now? We can only dream about things which we have seen or which we have heard. Okay? Basically, they constitute of whatever we have seen or heard during the waking state. The impressions carried over in that state, they constitute the dream state of consciousness. There is a world which we have projected within our own consciousness based on what we have seen and what we have heard while we are awake. Such a state is called Yah Prapanchaha Pratiyate, he says, the world that is projected. We project a world of our own in the state of consciousness called as dream. Now it has another facility. Dream has another facility which is much more than the waking state, in the sense that you can go anywhere, you can do anything, you can visualize anything based on what you have experienced earlier, and you can make a combination of things also. You can make a combination of things also, which is in one way called as Vikalpa. In the yogic tradition and the Yoga Sutras, they call it's imagination. There is a faculty of imagination in the waking consciousness, and there is a faculty of imagination in the dream consciousness state also. You can suddenly see a human body with some other head or face, or a face of an animal and a human body. Or you can make all kinds of combinations of the things which you have seen or heard and make it into it. For example, if I have not seen something but I have only heard about it, I may not have a concrete example to take it, but I can dream of what I have heard also by creating an imagination of that. I imagine based on what I have heard. If somebody has given a big description of, say, New York, I have never seen any picture of it also, then that description itself can form the basis for projecting a dream. So such a state is called a dream state. In the waking state, it is the gross body with which the self identifies. In the dream state, it is the subtle body, Sukshma Sharirabhimani, the self identifying itself with the subtle body, and it is called as Taijasa. Taijasa is a derivative of Tejas. It means the abstract noun form of Tejas is Taijasa. Taijasa means something which is glowing, which is shining, which symbolizes light. Generally, even though there is no physical light, the dream state has a light of its own. The dream state has a light of its own, isn't it? If you want to see it as a day, you will see it as a day. If you want to see it as a night, you can see it as a night. Is there any actual light connected with that? No. The consciousness itself projects a light or prakasha, and in the light of that consciousness, we dream. We undergo this state of being or state of consciousness, which is called as dream state. So this is therefore given the name called Taijasa. This is also sometimes referred to as Hiranyagarbha. I'll not go into other technical aspects of what is called in the Upanishads as Sutratma and the what we call as the Hiranyagarbha. We will talk about these things at a later point of time, because there will be digressing more into those aspects which are in a way technical in nature. But just as a matter of information, this is the Lord which provides, that is the self, Lord in the sense the self, which provides a light of its own, in the wake of which we undergo the dream state of consciousness. And therefore it is referred as Taijasa. Here, the beings are not operating consciously in the waking state, but in a dream state, which is nothing but a projection of the impressions carried over from the waking state. So such a state is called as a dream state. And I would, as a small digression, I would just like to mention that Jiddu Krishnamurti used to say that we dream because of the incomplete actions during the waking state. Any action which is incomplete, the residual of that incomplete action is what causes dream, he says. And in fact, he has also confessed in one or two talks, very rarely he talks about himself, but he says, I never get any dreams. I have no idea. His general level of consciousness is he doesn't have any dreams at all. Because of the reason that he doesn't carry any baggage or residual from the waking state of consciousness. The complete action, an action in the waking state, if it is completed and finished off once for all with it and kept aside, there is no residue to be carried over to this dream state. So that is one interpretation, that dream states, the dream state of consciousness is on account of the residual of the incompleted actions, which includes your thoughts and emotions also. Actions and thoughts and emotions which are incomplete, where there is some residue remaining. Only such factors can cause dreams. There's only one way of putting it, something which one needs to check up or contemplate and see whether there is any truth in the statement or not. We need not blindly accept Jiddu Krishnamurti, because he himself says, don't accept me. Don't accept me or take whatever I say as gospel truth and all that. You can experiment with yourself and then find out whether it is true or not. But this is also a part of the dream consciousness. And here the subtle bodies are active. The subtle or Sukshma Sharira, from the Kosha's point of view, includes the etheric double and that is the Pranamaya Kosha and the Manomaya Kosha. The Manomaya Kosha, as I have mentioned, is dual in nature. It has the desire part of it and also the thought part of it, that is the concrete thought part of it, which is the world of name and form. Both together form the Manomaya Kosha in the Vedantic terminology. In the Theosophical terminology, one is referred to as the astral body, the other is referred to as the lower mental body, but it's actually a combination of the two. Therefore, there is also a reference to it as an astro-mental entity. So the etheric double or the Pranamaya Kosha and the astro-mental entity together form this Sthula Sharira. And that is what the self identifies itself with. Because the gross body is unconscious. The gross body is lying down. And the consciousness has shifted from the gross body to the subtle bodies where we experience this dream state of consciousness. This is the fundamental issue which we need to recognize as far as the dream state of consciousness is concerned. Okay. Then we will go to the third state. Ataha sushuptyavastha ka aham kimapi na janami sukhena maya nidra anubhuyata iti sushuptyavastha karana sharirabhimani atma prajna ityuchyate. Then what is the deep sleep state? That state about which one says later on, that I did not know anything. I have well enjoyed a good sleep. Such a thing is called as the deep sleep state. When we are actually in the deep sleep state, we are totally unaware of anything and everything. Only when you come out of that state, you recognize that I was in a state in which I did not know anything whatsoever, kimapi na janami, and that I have enjoyed a good sleep. Sukhena maya nidra anubhuyata. I have experienced or enjoyed a good sleep. I was happy in that state. That state was very, very peaceful and very happy. Such a state is called as the deep sleep state. And here, the Atma or the self is identifying itself with the causal body, where the Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya koshas are associated with it. Some of the Vedantic texts attach only the Anandamaya kosha to the Karana Sharira. But at least personally, my study says that that may not be correct. It is both the Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya koshas. Both these koshas together function in the causal body. So there are 3 bodies and 5 sheaths. The Sthula Sharira and the Annamaya kosha are associated with each other. The Sthula Sharira or the subtle body and the Pranamaya kosha and Manomaya kosha are attached to it. Therefore, the Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira or the subtle body has 2 koshas. The gross body has 1 kosha, the subtle body has 2 koshas, and the causal body also has 2 koshas attached to it. You have to make, I think we have had a long discussion about distinguishing between a body and a kosha. So here the Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya koshas. The Vijnanamaya kosha is concerned with abstract thought. Abstract elements of our thought, where we see the archetype or essence of anything. That is the functioning related to the Vijnanamaya kosha. And Anandamaya kosha, as it is referred to, it is Ananda, or it is blissfully ignorant about any state. It's not bliss by itself. It is in a blissfully ignorant state. Therefore, he says, I don't know anything. I did not know anything there. You're totally ignorant about it. It is not bliss per se. It is a blissfully ignorant state where after coming out of it, you realize that it was very pleasurable, very happy, and that I have had a refreshingly deep sleep. That is what is called as Sushupti. And here, with what does the Atma or the self identify? It identifies itself with the causal body. And what is the technical term given to this? The technical term given to this is Prajna. Prajna is a derivative of the term Prajna. Prajna is that supreme intelligence. Prajnanam Brahma is the first Mahavakya pertaining to the Rigveda in the Aitireya Upanishad. And that state of being in which there is a semblance of the supreme intelligence operating, not the supreme intelligence itself. It is only a semblance of that supreme intelligence which is operating, which gives you that sense of having had a very peaceful and very happy sleep. a state of being in which the bliss is super conscious. That means you are much more conscious than your normal consciousness, which Sri Aurobindo generally refers to as the supra consciousness. That bliss is totally different. This is a semblance of that bliss. And the technical term given to is prajna, where there is a semblance of that functioning of that supreme intelligence, whose essential nature is bliss. Therefore, in a deep sleep state, you enjoy the bliss in that. But this bliss, you are unconscious of everything, including that bliss itself. Only when you come out of that state again into the wakeful state of consciousness, then you recognize that you just look at the watch and say, oh my God, I had a deep sleep for about 2 hours or 3 hours. You are not conscious of time, you are not conscious of space, you are not conscious about anything concerned about yourself. Your experiences, your knowledge, your memory, your awareness, nothing are functioning there. Such a state in which you are there, but totally unconscious about your being or your presence, in which there is a semblance of that happiness or bliss. Such a state of consciousness is called as the deep sleep state of consciousness, in which the Atma identifies itself with the causal body. Because it's in the causal body this is happening. So it identifies itself. So at different levels it is identifying itself. The Atma at the gross physical level is identifying itself with the gross body. The Atma is identifying itself with the subtle body and the 2 koshas associated with it in the dream state. And the Atma is identifying itself with the causal body with its associated 2 states of 2 sheaths or koshas. And at every level, it is identifying itself with a subtler and subtler. The subtle level is the gross, then the much subtler than that, and much more subtler than that is the causal body. That is what it is identifying itself. And it is specifically given this technical term called as prajna, because it is concerned with that state of consciousness whose essential nature is bliss. That is the nature of these 3 avasthas or states of consciousness. I hope the ideas I have presented and the definitions that are given here are very clear. Okay, I think we have gone for about 50 minutes. If there are any questions, we can take it up. Because before I go to the Pancha Koshas, then we have done what we have completed with the 3 bodies. Now the discussion will shift to the 5 koshas. So I'll stop here and take the questions that are there. I will for temporarily I'll stop sharing this and then go to the chat. Beena ji, why are many of our dreams negative or something which bothers us? Is it because we are thinking negative in the waking state too? Then there is this gentleman, Mr. N.C. Sarangi. As a corollary to Beena ji's question, can we turn our mind to dream only positive aspects? Okay, we'll come to Mr. Srinivas Murthy's question later. One thing, see, as you have yourself answered in one way, the negative aspects, you remember that in your presentation on wellness and happiness, you made a statement that the negative aspects are much more sticky than the positive aspects.
And they are more also. Yeah.
They stick like Fevicol and some glue than the positive aspects. So therefore, there is this negative aspect predominates in our dreams. And it is also indicative of fear at the subconscious and unconscious levels. There is another aspect which we have to remember. Fear is an aspect which is disturbing us. It's a negative aspect. And our being of consciousness, at every level there is fear associated with it. Somebody says my audio has suddenly reduced. I don't think it is mine. Others are able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think Vijay Lakshmi ji, I think it's your own audience, maybe audio system may be creating some problem. Anyway, now, so remember, as I said, negative impressions are much more long lasting than positive impressions. Unless we make a very conscious effort to develop a positive attitude towards everything, the negative will persist, the negative will stick. And the reason for this negativity to continue to stick is fear in different forms. Fear of something happening in the future, fear of losing something which you have, fear of everything. Fear is a very great factor. Fear is the biggest factor in life for all living beings. Fear of our own safety, fear of our own security, fear of our own discontinuity, fear of death, fear of disease. All these fears are, something again which to which we hold on. That is the reason. This fear is what causes us to accumulate things. Fear is what we want to overcome through possession. I want to have a house. I want to have a place of my own. I want to have things of my own. I need money of my own on which I have full control. All these things are there. So this is what causes the negativity, and more of the dreams generally appear to be negative in nature, but not necessarily always negative, but they keep popping up based on the activities during the day or some deep rooted and deep seated unconscious and subconscious fears. Okay. As a corollary, can we turn our mind to dream only positive aspects? Why? When you lead a positive life in the waking state, obviously you will carry those impressions only. You need not train your mind to dream positively. Maybe if at all one wants to cultivate something, better to have a dreamless state. Dream is only an intermediary state between waking and deep sleep, isn't it? It's not a long-lasting thing also. Maybe suppose we are sleeping for 6 hours or 8 hours, we may be only dreaming for an hour or 1.5 hours, or intermittently we will be dreaming, but mostly if you are physically tired, you are much more in a deep sleep state. So it's only an intermediary state. There is no question of tuning our mind to dream. Why should one make an effort to dream positively? Let us lead a positive life with a positive attitude, so that automatically that is carried forward into the dream state. And a better thing would be to cross over that also and be in a deep sleep state, which is much more refreshing and relaxing, both for the body and the mind, both for the gross body and the subtle body. Okay. Srinivas Murthy says, even though I have not seen or heard or imagined or unfulfilled, why some irrelevant or no, this is that you are assuming that you have not seen or heard or imagined. See, sometimes it may not be active in your memory. What you have seen or what you have heard or what you have imagined may not be active in your consciousness at a particular point of time. But in a dream, hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob, can you mute yourself, sir?
Yeah.
You can ask a question later. Let me complete what I am saying. So you see, what you dream need not necessarily be pertaining to of that day or that week or that month. Suddenly there can be a state of dreams which are related to remote past. Something might have happened which one might have completely forgotten. In the waking consciousness, that is not there in my memory. but it could be deep seated in the subconscious and the unconscious, and that will pop up to create some dreams which appear to be irrelevant and unconnected. See, there are practices for and people who go into the there is what is called as astral travel and all. I'm not a fan of all those things, and I don't believe in such things being developed and all, because they are all minor digressions and disturbances by focusing our energy on developing what is called as astral travel and astral visions and all that. That's all not necessary at all. As I said, it's a very intermediary stage as far as dream state is concerned. So it may appear to be irrelevant and unconnected in some cases of our dreams, pertaining to long past memories which are not active in our present memory, but they could be at a deeper level, deep-rooted level, which come out. Some of the dreams appear to be premonitory. That means you have an indication of what is going to happen in the future. We have the famous example in the Ramayana of, in the Sundarakanda, we find the Trijata suddenly waking up and asking all the Rakshasis, the female Rakshasas, not to torment Sita. She says, I have just had a dream in which I have seen the entire Rakshasa kingdom being destroyed, and I have seen Rama and Lakshmana in a white chariot drawn by 1,000 white horses, and they are flying from here to somewhere else in the Pushpaka Vimana, and all that. She gives a graphic description of her dream. So these oracles are there. There are some people who may have some of these faculties, which they have. They can vividly dream of the future, and a lot of psychology and psychiatry, the subjects are developed based on interpretation of dreams and all that. We need not go much into it. But fundamentally, to answer the second part of Mr. Srinivas Murthy's question, to the extent of my understanding of the subject, they do not relate to your past or previous births. They do not relate to your previous births. Previous births, any contact with the previous birth consciousness, previous births can happen only at the Karana Sharira level or the Jivatma level, and that too when somebody is functioning consciously at that level. So the previous births, there could be some freak cases. Some freak cases, it might have happened or something like that, but that's not a regular feature. And all study reveals that 99.99% they are not connected with the previous births at all. Okay. Then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ramesh Puttannaji, sir, is this comprehensive knowledge being acquired by sages, rishis, by actual anubhava? No, see, as I said, if you are able to consciously function at that level, you will have the direct knowledge. With respect to Karana, causal body, I have made a mention of this. You can function, if you are able to consciously function at that level, you can have a direct knowledge and direct perception of everything, which I called it as knowing by becoming. And also the principle of unity, which you are able to experience, that principle of unity. That's if you are able to function consciously at the causal body level, at the Jivatma level. So they can be acquired. They can be actually through one's own experience and one's own direct realization and perception, one can have a comprehensive knowledge about things. Again, sometimes we dream about future. Is that from our mind and understanding? That could be a projection from the past only, madam. As I made a mention, there could be very freak cases where one is able to vividly dream about the future or happenings which are, in the future that are yet to happen. Is that from our mind and understanding or from some other energy? See, as I said, we will be in contact with several forms of energy at the astral and astromental level. And depending upon one's own personality, what kind of energy will affect us depends upon the state in which we are and also our own frequency and vibration. So we may experience some freak cases, but dreaming about future may not be a very reliable guide, and one may not rely upon it to think that this is how it's going to happen in future. That could happen to somebody in the waking consciousness also. He can have a premonition of something coming. The omens and all, the interpretation of these omens and all are done based on this premonition. So it need not necessarily be a very reliable guide to what we have had a vision, which has not yet happened or which appears to be in the future. Can you summarize types of bodies? We said 3 types, no? The gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. And we have had a discussion about it. And by any chance, if you have not heard my previous 5 or 6 sessions, the video recordings are available with the School of Ancient Wisdom. And you can send your WhatsApp number or your email ID, and they'll forward you the links in which you can see these previous recordings, previous sessions, previous recordings. I think this is the 7th one, isn't it, Binaji? This is the 7th webinar on Tattva Bodha.
7th, yes.
Yeah.
Seven.
The previous ones are available. If some of you have not gone through it, then they can go through it, and that will give you some clarity on the 3 types of bodies. Janaki Ramji, many find it difficult to sleep in a new place. Many take sleeping pills. Is it normal due to personality difference? Yeah. See, first of all, one point is unable to sleep, disturbed sleep, sleep apnea. All these things are some psychosomatic problems, which are concerned both with the body and the mind. See, if you really want a deep sleep, the 2 things one need to do is don't sleep during the day. First thing, Diva Swapa is said to be not at all good. For a person who is old in his 60s or 70s and all that, for them sleeping during the daytime may be quite refreshing and required also. But that's not a thing. But generally, if you can avoid sleeping during the day, you will be able to have a good sleep anywhere. Number 1. Number 2, having sufficient physical exercise. Not only not sleeping, but we should be completely tired. The physical body, if it is completely tired due to heavy activity, then also you will be able to have a comfortable sleep. These are basic things. Now coming to a new place. Yes, environment and the vibrations of a new place can affect if one is sensitive, or generally people become sensitive with age also, and they have a lot of difficulty in sleeping in new places. You want a particular type of bed, you want a particular type of pillow, you want a particular type of the fan should be only at 2 or 3 and not beyond that. And only in certain people have sleep in only a certain direction. When your head is either to the west or to the south, then only these are the only 2 directions that are suggested. Your head should be towards the west or the south and not towards the east and the north. If you're sleeping with your head to the north, you are facing the south. South is the direction of death and yama, and therefore the vibrations and the electromagnetic waves may affect and all that. So the direction of sleep, the vibrations and frequencies of that particular place may not be conducive to one's own vibrations, and therefore may find difficulty in sleeping. And taking sleeping pills is absolutely prohibited. People take it, that's a different matter. People take the sleeping pills. I know several people who have been taking it for ages, for decades. They are addicted to it. Unless they have a pill, they can't sleep. But any pill has, especially sleeping pills, they have side effects and they are not good. And they induce sleep by dulling some of our senses. Some of our mental functions are made dull, and therefore they induce sleep. There are some herbs also. One suggestion that is given by these dietitians is to eat passion fruit at night before sleep. They say you have this passion fruit, which will give you a good sleep, which is a fruit actually, and which is nutritious. And therefore that could be one way of avoiding pills. And there are some herbal medicines also. There is a flower called as passiflora. An extract of this passiflora is there in the homeopathic medicines also. You take about 15 or 20 drops of it with water, that also induces sleep. But the best way is to avoid taking any medication for sleep. And as we grow old, the duration of sleep also comes down. And second thing is, it need not necessarily be in one stretch like children or youngsters who sleep for 6, 8 or 10 hours. You may get intermediate sleep for about 2 hours gap. That's also okay. Basically, after you have had your sleep, are you feeling refreshed or not is the indicator of a good sleep. If it is not so, then there could be a medical problem, there could be a psychological problem which have to be resolved. Okay. Many or most of the times we don't remember or recall dream experiences, whereas our waking experience, yeah, that's true, because dream experience is only, Sunita ji, basically dream experiences are passing experiences. And you vaguely, sometimes very vaguely remember the dream, or you may not remember it at all. That's okay, there's no issue at all, because waking experiences are much more gross. The experiences we undergo during the waking state are much more gross, and therefore they stay on. And dream states, they don't last, and they don't, sometimes, as you rightly said, we can't recall the dream we had also. That's a good thing. It's better to get rid of those things, because that's only an intermediary phase, as I said, between the waking consciousness and the deep sleep consciousness. Is an intermediary state through which you pass. So there is nothing, no problem at all. Okay. Audio, Bhasha, Sanaji, Dr. Sanaji, I think it's your, there's some specific problem with your system only. I think others are able to hear me. Yeah. Okay. Now, Binaji, so the bliss experience, the state is still limited by limited consciousness. Yes. Is there any experience of the real bliss of the nature of the ultimate reality that you can't even classify it as an experience? Experience is one where the mind undergoes it. When the mind is active and what it undergoes, that only we call it as experience. This you can't really call it as experience, it is a realization. To put it again in Krishnamurti, Jiddu Krishnamurti's terms, there is an experience only when there is an experiencer. When there is an experiencer, there is something which is experienced. But when there is no experiencer, there is only the experiencing part of it, which is in a present continuous state. And it ends the moment the experiencer becomes active. So when the experiencer is not there, there is no experience also. So this is basically what we are stating is, if you are talking about that real bliss of that ultimate reality, you can't classify it as an experience, ordinary experience, that which we have during our waking consciousness. Okay, so it is more that state is, that's why called as the Turiya, or the fourth state. Apart from these three states, there is a fourth state which is called as the Turiya. The Turiya also means the ultimate or the fourth state of consciousness. That is where you are in a supra-conscious state, where the I is not active, but the being is there, and that being experiences bliss. Is recording, writing, and remembering dreams good? Some maintain called dream diary is helpful, and how? I'm not very sure about it, sir, because I have no experience about this, Mr. Venkatesha. I don't know in what context they say, but I do not give too much of importance to these dreams. I don't dwell too much on something which is happening in a state of consciousness on which you have no control. Generally, we have no control over it, isn't it? What we dream, what comes into our mind at that point of time, we have no control. So basically, it's more important from a point of view of development of consciousness is to enable us to shift from the gross to the subtle and from the subtle to the causal bodies through sadhana, through yoga sadhana, we can function consciously at different levels. That sadhana is much more important than maintaining these dream records and dream diaries and all. If somebody is suggesting it, I don't have any knowledge about it, and I'm not really competent to comment upon it or criticize that. But from a scriptural point of view, from the yoga sadhana point of view, it is very clear that one needs to develop different levels of consciousness which are indicated in the as states of samadhi. Vitarka, Vichara, Ananda, Asmitanugamat, Samprajnata. Samprajnata Samadhi is very clearly described, and the stages are given as Vitarka, Vichara, Ananda and Asmita states. So that is a different subject by itself. So it is necessary to develop through yoga sadhana consciousness, conscious functioning at different levels and in different bodies and sheets. So that is more important than maintaining records. Personally, this is what I'm saying personally, and as I have already confessed, I have no knowledge about it. I am not competent to comment upon it. Sir, many try to understand if there is any message in their dreams. Is there any reality? This also the same reply, sir. I have no idea about it. Whether some messages come through in dream state and all that. Possibly they may come. Lot of literature is there published by the Theosophical Society, and there's a book called The Astral Plane. If you can go into it, they will give you some informative knowledge about these things. But this information is only for our curiosity, but from a sadhana point of view, it will not really help anybody. So I am not very sure about it, about messages in dreams and whether there is any reality to it. Again, I am not a competent person to talk about it. Practices like Yoga Nidra help deep sleep. I am not aware of this also, sir. Yoga Nidra, there are people who conduct programs on Yoga Nidra and classes on Yoga Nidra and training on Yoga Nidra. This Yoga Nidra is a different thing altogether. Actually, you are in a higher state of consciousness, completely unaware of your bodies. So they termed it as Yoga Nidra, but see, the thinking that by practicing Yoga Nidra one can get deep sleep and all that is also a matter of one's own experience. Some people say that they have some experience or they have practiced Yoga Nidra and all. Personally, I have never practiced anything called as Yoga Nidra. And again, my answer is I have no knowledge about it. With this, have we understood dreams conclusively, or is there still a mystery? There is a mystery throughout. The mystery of life doesn't end anywhere. There is nothing like understanding dreams conclusively. Every time we have new dreams, new types of dreams and all that. And there is a joke about dreams also. The joke says, don't give up on your dreams, continue to sleep. So you say the idea is if you have some great dreams, I think there is a quote that is often ascribed to Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. He says that dreams you experience in the waking state are much more important than dreams you experience in the sleep state. So a dream while you are waking, and that you can make it as your goal or an object or an aim in life, but not dreams per se. And the mystery part of it is something which continues till the end. Everything is still a mystery. Even the gross physical body is a mystery. We have really not understood the gross physical body also completely. It has tremendous capacities and capabilities and potential which we have not realized. So when we have not realized the mystery of the gross physical body and the waking consciousness level, obviously the dream states also remain mysterious only. And I would not say that there is something which we have understood conclusively also. It is something one needs to ponder over and do it. And Veena Saraswati ji says, please talk more on the effects of writing. How deeply do they get recorded in our subconscious? Writing of what? I don't know.
It is the question was just a writing, like if we're writing different
Author?
things. Yes.
About an author who is into writing as his profession, or he is
Yes, or
engaged in writing for long times.
right. Just a general recording that we keep doing through the concept of writing down, physically writing down something.
Okay, see, they will create a better impression on the mind. Writing creates a better impression on the mind and in the memory, rather than just listening to something or hearing and recording it. Writing records in a much more, there is precision in writing, and there is also a deeper recording in writing. So writing as a matter of practice is good, and the effects of such writing is always good. They get embedded into your consciousness at a deeper level. So that also is good, and it will be retained for a longer period of time in the memory. Okay. Monaji, yeah, please give your email ID and your mobile number here, Monaji, in the chat box. Aniket will note it down and then send you the link to the previous recordings, or the WhatsApp messages, WhatsApp links also, they will send you. Yeah, also sleeping in a particular direction, how important it is. One has to experiment with it. One has to experiment and find out which is the best way, best direction in which one is sleeping. But as a general indication, it is given that sleeping with your head to the west or the south are two better directions. But again, there is a caveat here. Sannyasis are asked to sleep with their head to the north. There are some guidelines for these sannyasis, as I mentioned, not to light the fire and all. They should always be, a sannyasi should always be conscious of the fact of the imminence of death. Imminence of death, one should be very conscious about as a sannyasi. A sannyasi should be able to just drop his body wherever, whenever possible, with the least amount of disturbance. That is the actual meaning of the Mrutyunjaya mantra also. Mrutyunjaya mantra does not mean that you win over or to have a victory over death. It is not Mrutyunjaya as we understand it. Mrutyunjaya mantra very clearly says, Urvarukamiva bandhanan mrutyor mukshiyam amrita. Release me through death like an Urvaruka. Urvaruka is a, what do you call as a fruit, which is also used as a vegetable. It's a form of a kaddu. It's a form of a kaddu. They use it in making dal and sambar and other things also. It's yellowish and
Cucumber.
brown. Yeah.
Cucumber.
Yes, yeah, cucumber. This thing is there. They have different names in Hindi also. But that, if you have seen, why I'm referring to that, if you see the stem through which it will be hanging will be very light. You just give a twist to that fruit, it will fall off. That's called the Urvaruka. So Urvarukamiva bandhanan. The attachment should be such that a small twist should detach you. So therefore the mantra says Urvarukamiva bandhanan mrutyor mukshiya. Release me through death as though it is this Urvarukamiva, the Urvaruka fruit, and not from immortality. Urvarukamiva bandhanan mrutyor mukshiya mamruta. Trayambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam. This Urvarukam is sugandhim and pushtivardhanam. Trayambakam, again, you can take it as see, it is a reference to Shiva, who is the Lord of death and Lord of destruction. So that is how one needs to conquer death. Not one can conquer death only through wisdom, through jnana. Avidyaya mrutyum tirtva vidyaya amrutamashnute is the very famous mantra from the Ishopanishad. So to cross over this ocean of ignorance repeatedly through death and come to that other shore of immortality through vidya. Okay. Yoga Nidra is state between waking and sleeping. There cannot be a state of sleep. I'm not aware of this Yoga Nidra, madam. I have not made any study or research into Yoga Nidra, nor any experimental or practical approach to it, and therefore I will not further comment upon it. Can you also cover the topic of Turiya in detail at some stage later? We can take it up, sir, but let the Tattvabodha part be over. When the Tattvabodha part is over, the Turiya state, again, we need to go to the Upanishads and all. Especially the Mandukya talks about the fourth state of consciousness, and we can talk about it at a later time. Okay. Yeah, please send your reference, email IDs and numbers for recording. I think Aniket has noted down these numbers of Monaji and Shivanandji, both their email IDs and numbers. I'm sure Aniket might have noted it down. He will send you the recordings. Anything more? Do we have any further questions about these three states of consciousness? Otherwise, we can.
Krishnapaliji?
Yeah.
Umesh wants to ask you about.
Please, Umeshji.
Hello, good evening. Sorry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon for us, yeah.
I just wanted to talk about Panchakarna once again.
Okay.
What I wanted to understand really was about if Brahman chooses to descend, and then the subtle elements gets grosser by combination of subtle with the grosser and formation of which is Panchakarna. My question is this: when Brahman descends, there was nothing there. It is so. Where did the subtle element come into existence, or is it along with the Brahman that it derives from Brahman?
The descent itself will bring along with it. The descent of consciousness itself brings along with it the material required for the different planes.
Okay.
That is one thing. So from the Vedanta point of view, they have given this intermediary called as Prakriti.
But was Prakriti existing when it descended?
No, there is in the Avyakta Prakriti. There is a Vyakta Prakriti and an Avyakta Prakriti. There is an unmanifest state of Prakriti also.
Which is unknowable.
Which is unmanifest. So in that state, the three gunas are in their purest form. The gunas are there, but they are in their purest form in the unmanifest state of Prakriti. And once it comes into Prakriti comes into manifestations, the gunas come together and they come in combinations. They don't come in the pure forms, they come in combinations.
So that means the important thing is that the unmanifested Prakriti is already existing when Brahman chooses to descend.
No. Don't presuppose the existence of anything prior to the Brahman. See, Brahman is only to be understood as a symbol for our understanding. That's all. We can't take anything. Yeah, it's only a symbol. Brahman is a symbol of ultimate reality. We don't know that ultimate reality at all. We have absolutely no knowledge about that supreme intelligence or ultimate reality. You understand?
That's true. Yeah.
It's only an explanation. No. As I mentioned earlier, sir, don't hold on to these explanations too much, because these explanations really do not explain anything.
Yeah, but it is kind of opening up more questions, because if the three in the purest form, three gunas already exist.
In the
And then,
Avyakta Prakriti,
yes, yes.
see, before,
But
say, like I'll give you an example. These are only examples only. You are about to enter the stage of life. We are in a drama. You are playing a particular act and I am playing a particular role or whatever it is. Now we are in the green room. In the green room, it is Avyakta. It is we are getting ready. And once we come onto the stage, we have got ready. We have dressed up. We have assumed that character. We have assumed that role and come to play that role. That is the Prakriti manifesting. Prior to that, there is a preparatory thing, and please don't even understand in terms of time as though Avyakta Prakriti is here for some time, then it gets ready, and then it gets into Prakriti as Vyakta Prakriti or manifestation. It's all happens in a fraction of a second. It's in a timeless state. It happens. The very focusing of attention of the highest principle, which we call as the ultimate reality, or the Brahman, the very focusing of that attention is a trigger for manifestation. It's only a fractional difference between the unmanifest and the manifest. That is there, and then suddenly this comes into being. That's all.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, don't imagine that this is first and then that is second, then later on that is coming and all that. No sequence as we understand here down below.
Correct. The time factor does not exist.
We understand here. Time dimensions are different in different dimensions. Astral time dimensions are said to be different. Mental time dimensions are said to be different. Then astral time dimensions, because they are different only, we have all these rituals and all. We perform the annual ceremony of those who have passed on, isn't it?
Yeah.
For them, 1 year on the earth is equal to 1 day on the astral level. So when we are performing annual ceremony, it is like feeding them on a daily basis at the astral level. So the time frame with which we are talking about is said to be different at different planes of existence.
Yes.
And we are talking about the primordial factor at the beginning of the manifestation, which is actually in a timeless dimension altogether. Okay?
I get it. So it's almost simultaneous, kind of.
It's instantaneous. It's instantaneous. It's there and then it comes into being. We don't know the time doesn't enter into that phenomenon at all.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think, sir, one last question. Sorry for the late question.
Yeah.
Time.
Who is this?
This is Parth, sir.
Parth, tell me.
Very basic question, sir. Like, in my day-to-day life, I keep trying, to keep my mindset fixed on, the thought of the being who you are, while I'm working, while I'm doing. So would you suggest something, how can we keep our mind focused, on this idea or on this knowledge or this understanding while, doing the everyday work, in our life, like moment to moment?
What you have already mentioned, no? You see, as I said at the beginning itself, when you are consuming anything through the 5 senses, remember that you are not the entity which you think you are, but there is a higher being operating through you. If you the moment you recognize that there is a higher being operating through you, all your actions will get purified. You will not like to do anything bad or wrong or impure or imperfect, because that principle is what is watching you. That higher principle is operating through you. So if you keep that in your consciousness, there will be a great transformation and there will be a great change in all your actions. And that is, if you are able to sustain that to the extent possible, then everything will fall into place.
So that is exactly my question.
Yeah.
How to sustain that? Because mind has its own tendencies.
Continuously dwell upon it. If you see, as your attention, as you become inattentive, draw it back to that attention. Or again, if you want, Jadu Krishnamurti, he says, become attentive of the inattention. You become attentive of the fact that you have been in inattention. So you can focus your attention on that inattention also, constantly, and then retain that. See, these are all practices for the initial part of it. Otherwise, it will always be there at the background. See, all of us have at the background that I am so and so at all times in the waking consciousness. Or is there any moment you forget that you are not Parth? Right? So that background is always there. We may not consciously recognize it, and it may be there, but we can consciously prepare a background in which the true self, the higher self, is given a place of importance for recognition. That I have a higher purpose for operating through this body. I have a higher purpose operating through my emotions. I have a higher purpose operating through my thoughts. So when you recognize that higher purpose of your own being, that will constant bearing that thought in mind will strengthen it, and that will become the background.
Sure, sir.
Okay. Right. Anything?
I don't think there are any more questions, Krishnapani ji.
Okay. Thank you so much.
But thank you so much. I think we won't be able to start the 5 sheets. So
No, we're not. Anyway, I wanted to stop here. Not start it.
okay.
We'll start it only next week. We are not in a hurry.
No, we are not. There's no
As
plane
though we
to
want
catch.
to get
No train to catch.
We want to get all the knowledge out of Tattva Bodha in 1 or 2. And even that is not. This is not sufficient. This is only a beginning part of it. That's why I called it as an introduction to Tattva Bodha.
Correct.
It's only an introduction. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Krishnapani ji. Lots of thank yous on the chat.